You're listening to the Am I a Man Yet podcast, a conversation about rediscovering modern masculinity. Welcome back to episode 5 of the Am I a Man Yet podcast.
I'm Max.
And I'm Adam. Just before we get started, just want to say thanks to those of you that are sharing, you're interacting with us, engaging on social media posts, stuff like that just really just helps us out a ton. And also, it's just good to engage with those that are listening and carrying on the conversation. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's the whole point, right? I mean, this is like we say that all the time. We're trying to create a conversation, so that's the best place that we can have it. Mm-hmm. We can't necessarily bring you in with us today. Maybe other times, but so that's where we have to have that conversation. So please keep it up if you have been. If you haven't, check us out. Tell your friends, your parents, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that just like you said, that's the whole reason why we're doing it. We're just hosting the conversation. People have sent us articles that you've came across. That just kind of gives us like, oh, this is at least on your radar now, and seeing articles, seeing things come out that kind of address these issues, and you're sending them to us. So thank you for that. Again, just engaging with us on different platforms is a huge thank you to you guys. So Jeremy Lotz, one of my pals, has been following us, gave us a recommendation. He also is a therapist by trade and just started his own therapy company, I guess you'd say, and so
practice.
Yeah, his own practice, and so he has a lot of light to shed on this kind of situation too. So just thanks, Jeremy, for your love and review on that. So anyway, Max, you want to kick off just kind of what we're looking at today?
Yeah, so we got big news today. For the first time in its 127-year history, the American Psychological Association, the APA, has released guidelines for boys and men. So guidelines for the psychological practice with boys and men. They've released other guides like this before. I think it was in 2007. They released one for women and girls. And in other years, they've released them for all different kinds of subsets of society. But this is the first time that we've seen one for men and boys, and so there's been a lot of the news outlets have done articles on it. Obviously, the APA put out their own paper on it. It's 36 pages, so we're going to kind of dive into that, talk a little bit about what it says, and I think basically it just tells us we're right.
Yeah, basically. So case closed. But
hang our hat up.
Yeah, but
so they're worrying. So like what we've been calling that stereotypical, I think dude man. I think we've used that phrase. Mm-hmm. We've said 1950s male, Mad Men style. They call it masculinity ideology. Is the official term for what we've been talking about. And what they've found, or what they said, the headlines, if you find one of these articles, what it's going to tell you is that this masculinity ideology, let's read the headline, it'd be the easiest thing, is linked to homophobia and misogyny. And so obviously it goes more in depth, and that's a headline. But yeah, we're going to jump into that and really start that conversation of what this means.
Yeah. And we'll post the link to this in the show notes so that you can kind of follow along and you can listen to our conversation. But I think it'll bring more weight to the conversation if you kind of read along and kind of dip your toe in the water a little bit for what this article is even saying about this. So,
yeah, I was excited to see this come through because I felt like, I told you this, I feel like in a way we've kind of been like, fake it till you make it, fake it till you feel it. Like, I know that people are listening and they tell me it's important, but are they telling me this is important because they're my friends and they care about me? Or do they act like really think this is important?
Right.
And so, obviously the APA does not know me at all, that I exist, and
Yeah.
they are saying it's important. So it was a bit of validation for me when I saw this article come through and I read it. I started reading the actual APA paper. I have not made it all the way through yet, but I've been working through it. I mean, it's only 36 pages, but it's not like I mean, it's like a journal article, so they're not
Right.
they're not light
It's
reading.
not engaging.
Right, it's not
Yeah.
light. They're not made for our audience.
Yeah.
So in the article we've been looking at, I mean, what was something like kind of that first thing that jumped out at you that stuck?
I mean, I honestly, not too far into the article, they start throwing stats out, which always triggers something in me. That it says men commit approximately 90% of all homicides in the U.S. They are far more likely than women to be arrested and charged with intimate partner violence in the U.S., and they're 4 times more likely than women to die of suicide worldwide.
Right, which we hit on the suicide thing a little bit in our last episode with mental health.
Yeah.
For sure. And so I've read this article a few times, and listening to you just read it again, it makes me think, I can hear people saying like, oh, that's because those are their men, of course, right?
Right.
And I think what's important to realize is that it doesn't have to be that way. Like it's not men's nature to commit homicide.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in men's nature to abuse their partners and their loved ones.
Right.
But they're the ones who are doing it, right? And so, okay,
Yeah.
so why are they the ones that are doing it? And so that's what brings us back to this. This is the why. This identity, this ideology that they have to be men, and what that means,
So in that article, right whenever I read the statistics, immediately underneath that is a video of Boys Don't Cry. Only about a 3-minute video. Max and I watched it before we recorded, and we just kind of came to the conclusion, like, this is just more of the same thing, that boys don't cry. Well, what happens to the boy that does cry?
Well, yeah, and that's not even the boy that does cry, because like the video says, and like we all know, everybody cries, right? Like
It's a
you might,
feeling.
you might try and like bury it and bite your finger, punch a wall, kick something to stop that crying, but it's there. So whether you stop it or not, it's there. So it's not boys don't cry, but no, I'm crying, so what am I? It's no, humans cry,
Right.
So you're human.
Right.
First off, if you're listening to this and you're trying to figure that out, you're just human. That's an emotion. You can't really control them. You can bury them.
You can cope, but all in all, though, you still feel that emotion.
Right.
So
As you should.
right, that's just part of it. You feel the emotions, and so it's just kind of not that you have to listen to yourself, but why are you feeling this way? Try to get to the. It's not that I think that all feelings are necessarily true. I could be feeling jealous for something, and I may be wrong in feeling that way because I may be believing something that's not true. Like I don't know what I'm trying to say exactly. Just that emotions aren't truth, but you're feeling that way. So why are you feeling that way?
Right. So,
way.
I mean, I think emotions are true, first off. I think they're true. The reason, the stimulus that is causing that might not be true.
Yeah.
Right?
Did I say that emotion? I don't know what I just said.
It's okay. I think you said emotions aren't true.
Yeah.
Which I know what you mean, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's what you're kind of saying is that, like, you can be angry at somebody and they're trying to help you, but you
Right.
perceive that differently.
Right.
Your emotion of anger is true, but
Yeah.
the stimulus, what you've taken in that has given you that emotion is probably not
Yeah.
true.
That's what I meant to say. You just.
And so what we so what you need to do, or what you need to know, is like that when you bury it, right? So when masculinity tells you you can't cry, you can't feel, you bury it, and then you don't get to feel it, and you don't get to share and express it. So now that false stimuli becomes truth, right? Because you can't talk about it, right? Like, I can't tell anybody about this because if I do, I'm going to cry, and I can't show anyone that I'm going to cry, or that I'm, men can show anger. That's 100%
Acceptable.
acceptable.
Yeah.
Anything less than that, like uncertainty or doubt, not acceptable. So I can't show that, so I'll show my anger instead. And But a lot of times, like, if we can just take our emotions, see them, express them, and then a lot of times they're out there, that stimulus can change, right? So if I'm mad at you, and I tell you I'm mad at you, you can say, no, man, this is what I was doing.
Right.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But if I just keep it in and I just stay angry at you, you never get that opportunity.
Right.
And so this is just a vicious, I think, the term that gets thrown out is that toxic, right? So that's what makes it toxic, is that I don't ever give you that opportunity to talk.
Right. Yep.
So, what kind of jumped out for me, so I feel like I've been kind of wrestling with this part of it, is that, I feel like I've brought this up in other episodes too, is that in the article it talks about how it's this double-edged sword. Power and privilege that males have when compared to their female counterparts, like that's in popular media all the time, this idea that, the power and privilege of males, and I think this is maybe a topic for another episode, and that we'll have to reach out to people, but like I noticed in the video, so this is like sub-topic, I noticed in the video that the video highlighted African-American, like the actors were all African-American, and I imagine that masculinity in African-American culture is going to be slightly different than white middle-class culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would guess even like class-wise, like we're very similar.
Yeah.
And so I've thought about that too. I think I put it on one of my brainstorm lists on things we could hit is, how does masculinity play out different in different, still the American culture, but different race and socioeconomic statuses. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. It's for sure different, I think. I think we can just acknowledge it.
It's definitely different.
Yeah.
And so, like, I guess that's the disclaimer, is that we're giving you our perspective, like, and that's all we can do. And that's all, I would hope that you would expect of us. But back to my main point, that the article, what grabbed me, or what stuck out to me, is it's this double-edged sword. This privilege can be psychologically a double-edged sword. So, men who benefit from their social power are also confined by system-level policies and practices, as well as individual-level psychological resources necessary to maintain male privilege. So they feel like they have to maintain this power and privilege, and the only way to maintain this power and privilege that society tells them they have is to act in a certain way. So even if they don't want to act that way, this is that breaking away from the herd part of the paper. I can't break away from the herd because then I lose my power and privilege, and that's what makes me a man. Like, that's what it's bad that I have this male privilege sometimes. It's good that I have this male privilege sometimes, but that's the constant through it, is that it's the power and privilege of maleness. And if I default away from that, I'm going to lose that.
Right.
And then kind of like, I think kind of what you were getting at earlier with, if I cry, boys don't cry, man up, boys don't cry, where your balls at? That stuff, right? Like, oh, but I'm crying, I'm a human, I'm gonna cry. What am I? Right? So it throws people, and so I think, that's that psychological double-edged sword. Like, I don't want to be this way, but I have to be. And that makes it,
just adapting to survive at that point, and it's a tragedy. Honestly, it really is.
And I think what makes it more tragic, and kind of like when we go all the way back to that TED Talk, is that a lot of men are feeling this way. Yeah. So as soon as one steps out, they're not broken off from the herd. Right? Like the herd kind of shifts and comes with them, and is like, I agree, I'm the same way. Or
like, why are we doing this to ourselves?
Right. Exactly. Like, it's like, just start, like, just put it out there, because really the men that have that desire to subscribe to this male or masculinity ideology are probably the ones that are in the minority. Right. And so I think, the same thing. So I'm thinking of the TED Talk. He goes on that vacation with his boys, and it takes him the whole trip to say something. Yeah. The nurse, the next one we did, the nurse is so nervous to tell his friends that he's going to be a nurse, and he tells them, they're like, cool. Yeah. That's awesome, dude.
Not a big deal.
Right. And so
Yeah.
I just we've seen evidence of this, and I think
Yeah.
that's the case most of the time.
Yeah. But, so, yeah, guys, take a look at the article and give us your thoughts on it too. Something that I told Max before we started recording was that you keep reading all this stuff, you hear the statistics, you see the videos of, and you just know that things aren't getting better, and it's like you feel like you're running up a treadmill in sand with no end in sight, and
Sisyphus.
yeah.
This guy that pushes the rock up, and the guy's knocking down the mountain as soon as he gets almost to the top.
Yeah, basically. And it's just like you just feel like you're in a losing battle. And
well, and for me too, it's I think and this is what I responded to off recording, is that we've identified the problem.
Yeah.
Right. Like we get it. Like this ideology is the issue that's causing a lot of other problems.
Mm-hmm.
So now I feel like, okay, so now what's the next step? What do we do to help, to change, I think that's what we're doing here. I think that's what I hope we're doing.
Yeah.
I think that was the point or the goal behind some of those challenges that we're putting out on social media, is to start breaking this down. If it's a challenge, then it's okay to be vulnerable, right? Because you're being challenged too. So, I don't know. I guess we just got to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's
keep
not
talking.
Not that I was at any way feel like we need to stop.
Oh yeah, no.
It's just kind of like this is gonna be a lot harder to get this shift.
For sure.
There's a lot of work ahead of us, and it's just breaking down those what feels natural.
It's so ingrained.
Ingrained.
So ingrained. Like we do this podcast, and I constantly catch myself falling back into those narratives, or sometimes my first thought, like that snap thought, would fall in line with that ideology, and then I'm like, whoa. Wait, why am I thinking this? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I'm learning to stop and take that time, but it's so hard, and when I'm consciously very aware of it, so I start to think someone who's not even thought that people are writing articles about this, that's how far they are from it. How do we even how do they start to become reached?
Right.
And but society's changed a ton. And very little time. I mean, just look at, and I think that's what causes a lot of our discourse today, is that there's just been so much change, and people don't like change, and so it's definitely not undoable. Yep.
And our reach is more digital than ever before, to where we have a platform, so we're using it in the best way that we can. So that's just all. We just have to stay the course.
For sure.
So
for sure, I'm excited for it. I'm excited for it. I think I'm excited for the feedback we got. It's starting to grow. I'm starting to get more and more people that I don't know, or people that I didn't realize were maybe aware. I watch one of our friend's daughters, and her mom sent me an article this week, and I didn't even know if they knew that I was doing this, or I know I'd mentioned it to them before, but I don't know that I ever told them I was actually doing it. I just can't remember. And then she sent me this article and was like, "Hey, thought of you guys with this," and so it's if anything within this little circle, it's putting in people's minds more. Making it more okay to talk about and send articles about, and not thinking that they're the only ones thinking it. Yeah,
and honestly, it's just getting it on others' radar, so that when they do see, that's not a new topic. I've heard this before.
Right.
It's becoming a more normalized subject that we've noticed. Not that we're just more aware of it because we're doing a podcast about it. Maybe that is the case.
I did question it. I was like, it's like when you
buy a car and you see everyone has this
Nobody
car.
has Elantras.
Right.
I'm the only person with an Elantra, and then you buy an Elantra, and that's the only car on the road.
Right. So I don't think that's the case, though. I really don't. But
even if it is, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Because I'd much rather be tapped into that community than not be tapped into it.
So, anyway.
All right, well, we got to go watch the Chiefs.
Chiefs.
Win this game real quick against the Colts. So if you live in Indianapolis and you happen to find us, sorry. Have to send your team home.
Yeah.
Snowy, cold, and losers.
Yep, is what it is.
All right.
All right. Peace.
Peace.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Am I a Man Yet? Let's just continue the conversation. And so you can follow us on social media at Am I a Man Yet on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can even email us at amiamanyet@gmail.com. And don't forget to share this, rate it with your friends, and just to rate it on iTunes. That helps us out a ton. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.